I'm Ben, the playlist fiend. I like music. I make YouTubes about it. And you read the title, so you know in this one I'm taking every song from the Beatles' White Album and ranking them worst to best. Some of you may have seen my last Beatles video where I ranked all their albums. When I got to the White Album, I said every song in it was great, there was nothing skippable, and I stand by that. I think it's a beautifully flawed album with very high highs and not very low lows, and some very interesting material in between. Hey, it's a double album. It's all over the place. So, okay, I also said this in that last video. What's the worst song? Obla Di Obla Da, Bungalow Bill, Savoy Truffle, Wild Honey Pie? It's Wild Honey Pie. Ah, so young. So naive. As you will soon see, I've changed my mind about that. Ranking the Beatles stuff is hard, y'all. Probably harder than like any other band ever. Because all their stuff, even like the bad stuff, is really, 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 really good. So yeah, Wild Honey Pie is going to be low on my list, but not that low. A quick disclaimer before I start. My opinion on Beatles stuff has changed so many times throughout the course of my lifetime, and it will likely change again because it's the Beatles. It's all high quality. The vast majority of it could be placed high, even at number one. The White Album especially. I love all these songs off the White Album. They're like my children. So I guess that would mean I have 30 children. But anyway, my point is that it's incredibly hard to pick a favorite, and I reserve the right to remake this video in a decade or so with completely different rankings. Okay, enough rambling. Let's get into it. I know. Okay, please don't click off. Hear me out. I know right off the bat I've probably pissed some people off. Long, Long, Long is a beautiful George Harrison song, but it comes right after the head rush that is Helter Skelter, and the momentum of the album slows to a crawl. It's the beginning of a series of songs that I would consider the weakest point on the White Album. Double albums tend to run out of steam near the end, and unfortunately the White Album is no exception to that. There are just better Harrison songs that deal with his love for God and his spirituality, even during this time. So that's why this one's my least favorite on the White Album.
Number 9.
So technically this isn't even a song, right? It's a sound collage designed to sound like a revolution taking place. That was probably a pretty topical thing to make in 1968. Most Beatles fans don't care for it. Paul famously hated it. This was purely a creation of John and Yoko's with a little help from his friend George. Still, even for an avant-garde creation, it has an odd pop structure to it with the number 9 motif and the repeated usage of samples, giving it a bit of organization. I don't hate it. In fact, I could make a whole video about it. I find it fascinating. But yeah, it's not a White Album highlight.
Honey pie, you are making me crazy.
Props to Paul for bringing vaudeville and Tin Pan Alley into the Beatles' repertoire. One of the best things about the White Album is the freedom each member had in the studio to pretty much try anything they wanted. Honey Pie is a fun tryst with the style, but I can't go any further than that. It's a little corny. It's Paul being Paul. He was really diving into standards and classical music and trying to craft pop music out of it, just to see if he could, I guess. Most of the time he succeeded because Paul McCartney is a songwriting genius. I wouldn't call Honey Pie a failure, I just wouldn't call it his best. Obviously, and I don't think I'm in the minority here when I say this, the single version of Revolution, the B-side to Hey Jude, is the superior Revolution. This slow version on the White Album is interesting, but compared to the single version, it just plods along for too long. I appreciate the slow blues delivery and the shooby-doo-wops. It's all nostalgic in a winking, ironic, very John Lennon kind of way, because obviously the lyrics deal with the politics of the day. But yeah, compared to the loud, fast alternative that is the single version, this one loses out every time.
Don't pass me by, don't make me cry, don't make me blue.
This one isn't weird until the violins come in and overstay their welcome. It just sounds very out of place to me, as does Ringo, to be honest. He wrote the song, but he doesn't sound very confident singing it. Maybe he didn't feel strong about the material, but by the time he wrote another song for the band, Octopus's Garden, that delivery issue would be remedied. When we think of George songs, we probably think of sitar-heavy spiritual classics, or we think of incredible moments in the band's catalog like Something and Here Comes the Sun. We might think of Taxman, That's probably the most fun song George ever did for the Beatles. We probably don't think of Savoy Truffle, but as far as the fun factor goes, I think it's a close second. It's silly, it's sweet, literally. You might think it might be a metaphor for something, but it's actually just inspired by George's observation that his friend Eric Clapton was always eating candy. It's a great song, but it's not George's strong suit.
Have you seen the little piggies crawling in the dirt?
Another George one that's pretty fun, though this one is actually more metaphorical, a satire on greed. I gotta admit, I enjoyed this one more when I was a kid. It just seems a bit more like a novelty moment in the album as I've aged, though the satire was lost on me when I was younger, so now I have a newfound appreciation for the underlying message as I've gotten older. Another lesser-known John song near the tail end of the album that over time he grew to be indifferent about. Apparently it's based on an old nursery rhyme. I don't really have much to add here. This is an often forgotten one, and the best part is the end, and that's not even John's part. That's Paul's improvisational outtake, the "Can you take me back where I came from" part.
Hey, Bungalow Bill, what did you kill?
The story around the inspiration for Bungalow Bill deals with John's distaste for a wealthy American who visited the Maharishi the same time the Beatles did and who went hunting with his mom. John describes the song as, quote, a bit of fun. And yeah, that's more or less the vibe here. It's an odd one with some consistent tempo changes and some random Yoko vocals. Very, very White Album. Sometimes you get the sense that John wasn't really making writing Beatles songs a priority during this time in his life.
Sexy Sadie, what have you done?
Here's another example of that, Sexy Sadie, another John track written about the Beatles' time with the Maharishi. This one is actually about the Maharishi and how John was pretty disillusioned with his alleged advances toward Mia Farrow. Yes, even before John was spitting fire on wax about Paul McCartney, he was writing diss tracks about spiritual leaders. Wow, I just realized that was 3 John Lennon songs in a row. He has better stuff on the album, obviously, coming up. He's actually my favorite Beatle. Ah yes, here it is. This is one of those studio goof-off tracks that made it on the album that maybe shouldn't have. I don't think you could really technically consider this a song. You can thank Pattie Boyd for its inclusion on the album. They were going to leave it off until she told them how much she liked it. It's not a Paul creation of the caliber of like Let It Be or anything, but it's still pretty fun. Dumb and self-indulgent, but fun. This is another fun one from John, messing around with all the Beatles lore. He mentions Strawberry Fields.
I told you about strawberry fields.
He says the walrus was Paul.
The walrus was Paul.
He talks about the fool on the hill.
I tell you, man, he's living there still.
Apparently it was intentionally meant to confuse listeners, especially those who took all the lyrics of Sgt. Pepper a little too seriously. Look guys, the White Album is long. It's got a lot of songs and they're all great, but some just leave more of an impression than others. This is obviously a song John didn't spend a whole lot of time on, and I'm not going to either. It's perfectly fine, but it's not going to make anybody's top Beatles songs list, right? Well, okay, maybe not. Never say never, right?
Now somewhere in the black mining hills of Dakota, there lived a young boy named Raccoon.
This Paul track is right after George's Piggies, which is right after Blackbird, so I guess we could say this is the animal part of the album. Actually, now that I think about it, there is no indication that Rocky Raccoon is about a raccoon. When I was a kid, I always just pictured Rocky Raccoon as being a raccoon, dressed up like a cowboy or something. But now, looking at the lyrics, I can see that Rocky Raccoon is just the guy's name, probably. So you know what? Never mind. Like I said, out of all the Beatles during this time, Paul was messing around with different styles the most. We've heard his Tin Pan Alley, and now we have a country song from the guy. And a very enjoyable one at that, with a great story attached.
No wonder will be watching us. Why don't we do it in the road?
This is usually considered to be a lesser Paul track, and I agree, but also, I love it. When Paul dives into the blues rock stuff, he goes all out. Oh Darling off Abbey Road is probably a better example in terms of quality, but the way Paul's voice just vamps all over the same lyrics over and over in this song is just a lot of fun to listen to every single time. At first, it's a suggestion.
Why don't we do it in the road?
By the end, it sounds like he's pleading and begging. Also, the song doesn't overstay its welcome, which is a plus. This is another fun Paul track that gets a lot of flack, probably because it famously caused a lot of tension in the studio, and John publicly said he hated it. But okay, John said that about a lot of Paul's songs. Look, if you want to take the Beatles as a serious, influential, important band, there's plenty of songs for that. But I think it's vital to remember that they weren't always that. They were also a great time. And I think people harp on Obla-Di Obla-Da way too much, maybe because it's later era Beatles, which was, I guess, supposed to be the time when the group made their most significant music. Look, the song is what it is, take it or leave it. It's Paul's take on West Indies style sounds with a lighthearted message. It's enjoyable, it's not deep, it's not revelatory, it's a bit of a pastiche. It's Don't Worry, Be Happy before that song even existed. It's super fun to sing along to and clap your hands to. And okay, I've gone on way too long about this one. Obla-Di Obla-Da is great. We're about halfway through the list, but before we continue, I want to ask one small favor of you. Please, if you like the video so far, and even if you don't, hit that subscribe button. It really helps my low budget channel out. Everybody remembers Blackbird, which was the other acoustic-based Paul song on the White Album. Mother Nature's Son is only slightly less beautiful than that one. Inspired by a lecture from the Maharishi, Paul wrote and recorded this one while things were tense during the White Album sessions. It's got a beautiful melody, and the doo-doo-doos and the humming from McCartney really put it all together for me. It's quiet, understated, and just a pleasant song from a generally chaotic album.
It's time to say goodnight.
I know I kind of ragged on Ringo earlier, but the dude was a perfectly capable singer, especially when given the right material. Good Night is the right material. It's a gorgeous ending to the White Album, a refresher after the interesting mess that is Revolution number 9. The lullaby melody penned by George and the string arrangement from George Martin and Ringo's innocent voice, it all works for me. It all feels like he's really actually putting us to bed after a long day.
If you want me to, I will.
I suppose we could call this one a ditty from Paul. It's about as long as Why Don't We Do It in the Road, and about as simple as that song too, but it's also a showcase for Paul's versatility. This guy can write any kind of love song, from something as epic as Maybe I'm Amazed, to something as plain spoken and straightforward as I Will. In the context of the very end of side B, or disc 1 of the White Album, it works. It helps wind down the first half of the album with a hint of sweetness.
So tired, I haven't slept a wink.
John notably had bouts of insomnia, as evidenced on Revolver's I'm Only Sleeping, and so he continued that theme with I'm So Tired, which is more accurately a lovesick ode to his new flame at the time, Yoko Ono. I love this song. The way John screams, I'm going insane, and his random musings about Sir Walter Raleigh.
He was such a stupid get.
It all makes it feel like it's an actual bout of sleeplessness. I've definitely been there before. This is one of those rare moments when Lennon and McCartney actually wrote this 50-50, and during the period of the White Album, that's saying something. Paul says they threw this together in one evening, and it sounds like, well, a big badass birthday party that I would love to attend. Even if you think it's one of the cheesier moments in the Beatles catalog, I can't argue with you on that, but I don't think you could argue that it isn't one of the most fun.
While my guitar gently weeps.
We've reached the top 10 with the final George song at number 10, one that obviously belongs near the top, and I'm sure a lot of you would argue that it needs to be even higher than where I put it. But it's honestly not one that I revisit a whole lot, even though, like everyone else on the planet, I love it. I think at this point in the Beatles' career, if anyone was doubting the songwriting chops of George Harrison, their heads were probably turned with this song. That especially goes for the two-headed ego monster that was John Lennon and Paul McCartney, but apparently that wasn't the case at the time, as no one wanted to help George with the song. song, and so he had to have his friend Eric Clapton play guitar on it. This one's a Beatles classic. It's been picked apart ad nauseum for like over 50 years, so I don't have anything to add here, only to say that it's essential listening, if a bit preachy in the lyrics.
You know how lucky you are, boy, back in the U.S.S.R.
The opener of the White Album sets the tone for a very random album, because it's a very random song. Paul's doing this whole 50s rock and roll Chuck Berry thing with a little Beach Boys thrown in for good measure, and the whole song is about a Soviet spy returning to his home country. The whole thing is pretty funny given the relationship the West had and still has with Russia. It's a Paul highlight on the album for sure. I feel like this is another one that everyone has a strong opinion about, but count me in the camp that says it's awesome.
Everybody's got something to hide, except for me and my monkey.
While George was finding himself spiritually and Paul was messing around with Tin Pan Alley, John just wanted to rock, man. And while he was plenty distracted with his newfound love, Yoko Ono, and his other love, heroin, he still managed to knock out an absolute rager of a song. John insists that the song is about Yoko, while the other Beatles thought it was about heroin, John's drug of choice at the time. For me, this is just a feel-good rocker in the vein of songs like And Your Bird Can Sing and Dr. Robert and the Revolution single, and it's meant to be played at full volume.
Don't forget me, Martha, my dear.
Another great example of the type of sound that Paul was playing around with. This one features a music hall arrangement, and it's the most beautiful rock song ever written that is about a sheepdog. Go ahead, name a better one. I'll wait. I guess this song initially wasn't well received as one of the highlights, but I find it one of the most charming songs on the entire double album. It's just a wonderful time from start to finish.
You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
This is another one of those Paul songs that has been talked about incessantly, and for good reason. Supposedly symbolic of racial tensions in America at the time, unfortunately it's an affirming song that still rings true today. For a simple acoustic recording, with some bird call sound effects thrown in of course, it's incredibly captivating.
And I feel my finger on your trigger.
The band didn't agree much during the White Album sessions, but at one point or another individually in interviews, all the Beatles have declared this as their favorite song on the White Album. And yeah, it's awesome. It's basically 3 different songs put together in an absurdly catchy, overtly sexual ode to Yoko Ono, and the title comes from a ridiculous cover of an edition of the NRA's American Rifleman magazine. The first part of the song is a surreal acid trip. The second part is this creepy bluesy bit, and the final is a wonderful send-up of 1950s Frankie Valli bliss. My only complaint, the song is too short.
So I sing the song of love, Julia.
Okay, just a warning, my top 5 is very John heavy, and this soft, devastating tribute to John's mother takes my breath away every time. John had said at one point he imagined holding hands with his mom walking across the beach when he wrote it, and to me that's exactly what it sounds like. The swaying melody, the subdued, uncharacteristic humming from John, the way he sings the lyrics like he's numb from heartbreak, from pain, or maybe he's dreaming. It puts me in a trance every time I hear it. It's one of those Beatles songs that will never get old for me. It's calming and unbelievably heart-wrenching and sad at the same time.
If I ain't dead already, girl, you know the reason why.
The Beatles tried a lot of blues rock on the White Album and throughout their career, and by far one of my favorite examples is this one from John, which is actually a tongue-in-cheek parody of British singers trying American blues. As a sincere blues song, which it is not, it's not very convincing. But with the context it was intended, which I think a lot of people don't know or realize, it totally delivers. John's lyrics are comically full of despair. Eagle picks my eye, worm licks my bone, feel so suicidal, even hate my rock and roll. And those half-assed guitar solos are just perfect. If Paul's approach to blues was arguably a little try-hard, John's approach was very, very John. He just did not give a crap and I find it very enjoyable to hear. By far, Paul's best contribution to the White Album is this song, a classic track that has been credited for inventing heavy metal music. That, coupled with the formation of Black Sabbath, and 1968 was a pretty excellent year if you're a metal fan. Helter Skelter certainly rocks very hard. It's loud, it's blistering, obviously.
I got blisters on my fingers.
And that guitar line is just angry in the best way possible.
Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter was apparently Paul's answer to Pete Townsend proclaiming in an interview that I Can See for Miles was the loudest song The Who had ever recorded, which, okay. But obviously Helter Skelter is way louder. Sonically, lyrically, the way it fades out and comes back, the whole song is just ridiculous, and that's a very good thing. And finally, this won't be controversial at all. This is my number one song from the White Album.
The sun is up, the sky is blue, it's beautiful, and so are you.
Quite possibly the only song that John wrote during his time with the Maharishi that wasn't spiteful or sarcastic. This one's about Prudence Pharaoh not wanting to come out of her hut and her eagerness to meditate more. And I'm sure you already know this, but it's an incredibly beautiful song. John's take on nature, on innocence, is childlike and positive and life-affirming. And that final chorus, when he slows down the lyrics, brings me to tears every time I hear it. It is unquestionably my favorite song from my favorite album from the Beatles. Okay, that's every song from the White Album ranked. Obviously, all this stuff is my opinion. I try to make a good argument for each placement, but it's just as valid as your opinion. The only difference between my opinion and your opinion is that I made a video about my opinion. But I would love to hear your opinion, so hit me up in the comments. Just a reminder, if you liked the video, please hit that subscribe button. I'll have more Beatles videos coming and all kinds of music related videos as well. I'm Ben, the Playlist Fiend, and thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.